Welcome back, friends. So in this video, we're going to talk about the milling machine I chose to purchase, how I got it into my garage, and how I powered it in my garage. Because the machine I picked is a 3-phase machine, and most residential homes only have single-phase power, so that's not going to cut it here. So the mill I ended up going with is a Syil X5. There was a bunch of machines I was considering, all in about the same form factor, all doing very similar things. I'll talk about them later in the video, but this is the one I settled with, and I'm very happy with it. It came late in the night on a big flat deck truck, and I was able to offload it myself with a forklift. All the machines I was considering were basically fork-liftable. This one was a little bit on the heavier side. It was 7,000 pounds, which is why the forklift is rather massive. Also, I was assuming we might have a big dump of snow, so I wanted something that would be able to handle, a bunch of snow if it did come. Thankfully, it did not. I was able to drop this on my driveway and slowly start uncrating it and getting everything settled so I could squeak it under the garage door, because there was very little room to get it in there. So I basically had to completely disassemble it outside. So I was quite thankful, it wasn't a blizzard and it was a decent night. Also, it was nice that it was night because, that I didn't have all my neighbors looking at me, which is, a giant silver machine sitting on or a silver wrapped machine sitting on my driveway draws a lot of attention. After removing the copious amounts of packing on the machine, I was finally able to get it to a point where I could start squeaking it under the garage door. My only goal for this evening was basically to get it in the garage so I could close the door and I could do everything the next day. It is a very tight fit. I knew the spec of the machine. I knew it would technically fit. And I knew I'd probably have to remove the cable chains for the spindle and Z-axis. And I did because it rubbed on the frame of my garage getting it under there. So I could have took the feet off and, gained another few inches of clearance. But this machine or this mill is heavy enough that once it was in the garage, it would be difficult to lift it high enough with the forklift. I didn't have enough extensions on the forklift to lift it high enough to get the feet back on. So I just chose to kind of scuttle it in with the feet on. And then once it was in place, I was able to move it with a pallet jack. A pallet jack can typically only move 5,000 pounds, and this mill is unassembled. I think it's right around 6,000 pounds. So it was a little bit of work. I was getting all my rental money out of that pallet jack that I possibly could. But with some levers and some gentle persuasion, I eventually got the machine in place and could commence the next part of this procedure, which is leveling, cleaning, and wiring this machine, because we have to provide power so it will go. Most of the machines I was considering in this category of mill do require 3-phase power. There was a couple of them. I think the Tormach 1500 MX is a single-phase machine, but for the most part, I was fairly sure I would settle with a 3-phase machine, which means I have to generate 3-phase power. There's 2 ways you can go about doing that in, a kind of residential home shop setup. You can use a rotary phase converter, or you can use a digital phase converter. I chose to go the digital route just because it's a lot more efficient, it's a lot quieter, and technically it's supposed to produce, a pure utility grade 3-phase signal, but they're all going to work for this style of machine. I mainly did it because it's quiet, and I didn't, have to burn thousands and thousands of watts of power if the machine isn't using it. I'm incredibly happy with it. The price difference between a rotary and a digital is small enough nowadays that I would just go with the digital. No one needs a giant noise box in their garage. Besides the point, had it mounted to the wall, got all the conduit run nicely, and then we had, the nice ability to generate the 3 phases of 240, or in my case, 246 volts, which is my typical line voltage. But that's not enough to power the X5. The X5 actually runs on 380 volts, which means I have to step up that voltage one more bit before I can feed it into the machine. It's also a little bit more complicated because it's 3-phase, so you have to have a 3-phase transformer. Now, if you purchase a Syil machine in the US, this is all much easier done because you get a transformer that's properly labeled. You can wire everything up. It's got inputs, it's got outputs. It's very simple. It's not very confusing. In Canada, we have a little bit different electrical code. There's a few different electrical things about my machine. For instance, it's a Siemens control as opposed to, an LNC or the other controls that Syil typically ships with. But the power thing is the one thing that caused me the first little hurdle, because the transformer that it shipped with, while is a very nice transformer, had almost no documentation, and the little description on how to wire it was super cryptic. I'm fairly comfortable with electronics and electrical work, and it took me a bit to wrap my head around it. It's a multi-tap 3-phase transformer, so there's a bajillion wires in there. Eventually, I traced them all out, had them all wired properly, tested the output voltage, and realized, my math worked out. I got the voltages I want, so I was able to wire up the machine, and we could eventually flick it on and see if it goes. I will say that despite how confident I was that I had my wiring correct, it was very nice to see the control panel boot up smoothly and, no smoke come pouring out of the electrical cabinet, because that would have been rough. Like I said, I was 98% confident that I had everything wired correctly. Nonetheless, we carry on. It all booted up. Everything worked well. The axes all moved around. I did some tool changes. I don't know the Siemens control, and that's another thing. This machine shipped with the Siemens control, not the LNC control. I actually had it quoted out at the LNC control price because I couldn't afford the Siemens option, but there's some sort of weirdness with Syil and the Canadian market and Siemens where they were able to offer the Siemens option for a very affordable price increase. I didn't pay very much more to get the Siemens control on here, and that means Siemens servos, Siemens everything across the board. So I'm incredibly happy with that. Just a little bit of getting used to it because there's not a ton of documentation on that. The one thing I will say about this machine, probably not the best machine for a beginner if you're not comfortable with, electronics, electrical, mechanical systems, because there is very little hand-holding with this, style machine. From, the wiring, I mean, you could commission an electrician to do all the wiring for you and get over that. But even like the manual, there's almost no information out right now for the Siemens control on these machines because it's fairly new. I'm very happy I have a Siemens control on it because there's tons of information about the 828D control, which is what I have. But the way it ties into the machine, there's not a lot of documentation on it. If you buy the LNC control from Syil directly through the US, tons of information, manual support, a lot more hand-holding. In this instance, it's kind of a lot of Googling and you have to figure it out on your own, which I'm fine with. I knew that going in, but if you didn't, that could be a scary bridge to cross. The two other machines I was considering was the Haas DC1 and the Tormach 1500 MX. I eventually stopped looking at the Haas just because of the price increase. It is about $30,000 more to option it with the high-speed spindle and all the options I wanted to get it to compete with the other two machines. So that just kind of pushed it out of my budget. The 1500 MX I was very interested in. I had quotes on it. It was just a little bit lighter duty machine. It's a few thousand pounds lighter. I didn't like the tool changer. The spindle was slower, and I didn't like the component quality choice. Otherwise, I think it's a fantastic machine. I think it is a lot easier for someone who's maybe not, savvy in this area to work with. I think it's easier to set up. But like I said, if I were to do it again, I would get the exact same machine, despite the troubles I've had. Now, we'll talk about some of the troubles. The main issue I had, and the issue we're going to gloss over in 30 seconds, even though it took me 2 months to get it all sorted, is I ordered the machine with a 4th axis, all the drives, all the wiring, everything in place so it could hit my floor and be running. It shipped with none of that. It shipped with the 4th axis, but it was missing the drives, it was missing the wiring, it was missing the updated PLC. And thankfully, when I contacted Syil, they owned the mistake. They said that's on them. It was on the manufactured bill list. It should have had the 4th axis. Someone made a mistake somewhere down the line, and they did their best to correct it. They basically sent me every single component that I needed, all the wiring harnesses, all the pneumatic harnesses, everything. They sent it to me as quick as they could. They gave me video instructions how to install everything. Like they did their best, but it was still a slog. Like there was a lot to go through. There was a lot of technical problems that were just not foreseen by either of us to get this machine up and running. If I had needed that 4th axis to be running on day one, it would have been a nail in the coffin. I knew it would have been months before I even ran 4th axis parts on here, so I wasn't super concerned. Also, the reason I was willing to do it myself as opposed to, demand my distributor come out and fix it, which he did offer to do. But like I said, I will learn more doing it myself, and it wasn't a major point that would, cause the failure of my business. So in my instance, it worked out. If I knew all this, would I still go with this machine? Yeah, like I still think it's a better machine for the price in this, range of machines. So that's my opinion on this matter. There's a million more things we could talk about with this machine, but you came here to see it go. So let's make it go. I put a couple vices on the table, just basically mimicked my Grizzly setup, put a piece of titanium into it, and started cutting titanium pocket clips. Those are the one thing that I do a lot of hand finishing on, so getting better quality parts directly off the machine would make a significant give me a significant boost in production very fast. And the code is very simple for them. So I brought that over first, and I was incredibly happy with the finishes coming off the machine. I actually set up a auto serializing program on this right off the jump too, because that's just been invaluable on the small machine. So it's nice on the big machine now. And slowly over the next, month or so, I just moved more and more and more components onto the machine. And right now, as of when I'm recording this video, I'm slowly moving the 4th axis components onto it. That way I can take everything off of the little mill, put it on the big mill, and just, reap the benefits of having more time. Moral of the story? Sometimes buying a big fancy machine tool isn't the answer, and sometimes it is. In this instance, it's just buying me back hours of time. That's what this machine is doing. It costs a lot of money, but it's paying me back in time because that's time I no longer have to spend on the parts, finishing them, bringing them up to the quality that I want them to be. The Grizzly mill can do the exact same things this thing can do. It just takes me more curt time, to make them pretty. So with those hours, I can put those towards bringing production up, building new pens, building new products, the kind of stuff that I want to do. Anyways, that's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.